Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
And greetings. Thank you so much for joining me, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, we're so happy to have as our guest fitness, exercise, and competitive athlete specialist, Nancy Clark, who is a registered dietitian and a board-certified specialist in sports dietetics. She attended Boston University and is a fellow of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and the American College of Sports Medicine. As a food coach and nutrition educator, Nancy's clients have included student athletes, 2 Olympians, and members of the Bruins and Celtics. She has been team nutritionist for the Red Sox. Her best-selling book, Nancy Clark's Sports Nutrition Guidebook, has sold more than 750,000 copies, and her nutrition advice and photo have even been featured on the back of the Wheaties box. So you can find Nancy at nancyclarkrd.com, and thank you for being our guest today, Nancy.
Well, this is my pleasure.
So, I just wanted to start off with how deeply trained you are in conventional nutritional wisdom. And, the use of the word coach, I'm finding someone like yourself that's really appropriate as a coach or a mentor and someone who wants to use nutrition, especially as it relates to sports. But I think that word, unfortunately, food coach, it has been diluted because all kinds of people call themselves a food coach. They took a weekend cooking class.
That's very true. I'd like to think that people look at the RD after my name, which stands for Registered Dietitian, and the CSSD, which stands for Certified Specialist in Sports Dietetics. So just as people have their fitness coaches, sometimes people relate to that word food coach. And some people think dietitians just still wear hair nets and work in the kitchen. So I'm just trying to educate people that if you're wanting nutrition help, that, I'd be glad to work with you and get you on a path that is professionally, with good professional knowledge.
That's so true. So I'm just interested in promoting the fact that the use of that word coach has been diluted so much that people should, if they're going to see whatever coach, health coach, or like in your case, exercise coach or food coach, look at the training that person has. And someone like yourself, Nancy Clark, you have years of really in-depth study, and the information that you would share with one individual is going to be quite different, I'm sure, than that you would share with another individual based on their circumstances and their goals.
Precisely. Nutrition is such an individual conversation, and people think that, they'll come and see me and I'll just hand them this form. And it's like, no, let's just sit down together and really look at, your food likes, your food lifestyle, whether or not you're cooking, if you're cooking for just yourself, and what are your genetics and your history of, your health history, so that there's so much that goes into a nutrition assessment, and it's not just one size fits everybody.
I'd like to remind our listeners you can always find out more at nancyclarkrd.com. But Nancy, that's so true what you just said. It is so individualized, and very often people will just sort of have a concept and not really know if it is appropriate for them and their body and their goals. Like, for instance, what about vegan athletes in sports?
Oh, vegan athletes.
Vegan, thank you, right.
Yeah. It is possible to be a very good athlete and eat a vegan diet. Not a problem. And people can do it, but do they do it? And sometimes vegans eat a very high quality diet, and sometimes they eat a whole bunch of potato chips and Skittles and donuts, and those can all be vegan, but they're certainly not high quality foods. So, as with anybody, it's being responsible with your food choices. And I have no problems with athletes that want to follow a vegan lifestyle, because it's more than just a diet. It's a lifestyle. It involves being responsible, food shopping, cooking foods, and having a quality vegan diet and not just plant foods.
So do you find that with someone who does choose that, even if they're doing it consciously, is there any kind of challenge with getting enough high-quality protein?
If a person is responsible, there's not that much of a challenge. But if you take students that are eating on the run and just grabbing, a banana here, a handful of nuts there, or a granola bar the other place, and eating very hit or miss, they might be missing out on a lot of nutrients. But if they're really working to include a lot of beans, lentils, tofu, vegetarian foods, then they can eat a very healthy diet and perform at a very high level. So I have, I'm not anti-vegan at all, but the person really needs to be educated that when they have some chickpeas on their salad, that those little chickpeas, they aren't really heavy-duty protein pellets. They need not just a sprinkling, but they need a substantial few spoonfuls of them. So it's the quantity that sometimes vegan athletes miss out on. They just don't eat enough of the beans and lentils, particularly if they're weight conscious. And a lot of athletes are very weight conscious.
That's true, and I want you to know, listeners, that you're listening to Herbal Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, naturalnurse.com, and my guest today is Nancy Clark, RD. She is the author of the book Nancy Clark's Sports Nutrition Guidebook, and you can find it at nancyclarkrd.com. Well, that was a good answer, Nancy. I actually do find, though, that many people, and even those who prefer a vegetarian diet, have other sensitivities like that really make it challenging. For instance, even lectin sensitivity, and there's so many lectins in things like you mentioned, beans, and they just really get a lot of gas from eating that. So sometimes it's more challenging than one might think.
Precisely, and that's where you want to work with a registered dietitian. And just, if someone is concerned about just the amount of protein that they need, in my Sports Nutrition Guidebook, I have, sections that list how many grams of protein are in, hummus and lentils and tofu and, eggs and yogurt and these different foods, be they plant-based or animal-based. And so it's a tool where people can get information. And a lot of people these days are do-it-themselves nutritionists. So hopefully they'll look for the right resources so that they can get the information that they need to be healthy. And if they do have sensitivities added on top of it, again, I can't emphasize the importance of meeting with a registered dietitian that can really help you have a balanced diet. It's so easy to eliminate. I've talked to people that have eliminated all sorts of things, and they're left with, like, what do I eat?
Yeah,
and
right.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, but then it's sort of with my clients who do have food limitations, and they feel much better when they stop the offending foods, but we can sometimes look at it as an adventure to bring in all these new foods that they never actually had included in their diet before. So just changing the perception of, not being able to something else like, wow, I can try all these new things. That's just kind of a better attitude to approach it with.
Precisely. Great approach.
And I know you have wonderful suggestions. Tell us the story about how you wound up being featured on the back of a Wheaties box.
Well, Wheaties was doing an educational campaign to encourage their Wheaties eaters to learn more about nutrition. And so I happened to be selected to be the sports dietitian that was on the back of the box, and they had a coach, and I can't remember who else was on the back of the boxes, but it was a part of an educational campaign, which was pretty cool.
Absolutely. We've seen all kinds of very, very famous athletes featured there. So I think it's a pretty prestigious place to be, and they don't just choose anybody off the street. So that also speaks highly of your renown within your profession as well as your education. So I think that's, a great thing to talk about.
Well,
do you find anything with these like professional athletes, someone on the Bruins and the Celtics, are they Celtics, I guess it's called?
Celtics.
My engineer will know that. He's a sports aficionado. If I say it wrong, he's going to give me a hard time. But is there anything special about those people? I mean, do they have an easier time committing to their nutrition than, let's say, a high school student?
It really depends on the individual athlete. Some professional athletes have an attitude of, they're just genetically gifted, and they have an attitude of, I can eat whatever I want. I'm doing great. Here I've made it to the big leagues, so I'm doing something right. And others have the attitude of, wow, I really need to keep myself in tip-top shape and stay healthy and keep ahead of everybody else, so I want every possible winning edge. So it just sort of varies the spectrum. As in real life, some people really understand that nutrition matters. For a pro athlete, they have two jobs. They have to have plenty of energy and perform well, but they also have to stay healthy. Or if they get injured, they need to be able to heal. And so that concept of health, healing, recovering has really gotten integrated into sports these days. And I think you'll find that more and more of your top athletes are paying a lot more attention to nutrition than they ever used to. When I first started, they could care less. It's like, lady, I'm making millions of dollars. What do you want to tell me? And now they sort of say, well, what do you think about blah, blah, blah?
Well, we're going to take a little break right here, and we're talking today to Nancy Clark. You can find her at Nancy Clark RD. And I'd like to remind you that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live online at nccradio.org or on iHeartRadio. For more information on today's guest or topic, send us an email at whpc@ncc.edu. Stay tuned. Herbally Yours will be right back.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. That's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
And thank you so much for joining us today, right here on Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. This is Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse. And today we're speaking to nutritionist and athletic nutrition specialist Nancy Clark. And she has some really great advice for her. Let's talk about some things that are kind of in the news. Like there seems to be some great things and some really not so great things with some of these very hot energy drinks and the ones that are called boosts and energy shots. What are your feelings about those, Nancy?
Well, if somebody's looking for an energy drink, they'll say, Nancy, what do you think about this? 5-hour energy or whatever. And I see it as a symptom. The problem is, why do you need an energy drink? Have you had adequate breakfast? Have you had adequate lunch? Are you eating, I change that word snack in the afternoon to second lunch. Are you having a large enough, afternoon energy booster from food? So many of these energy drinks offer caffeine, which is a stimulant, but likely people need energy from, food, like, bowl of cereal or a sandwich or a banana and peanut butter or apple and cheese. And that I would rather see people get true energy and not just a stimulant. So in my view, they're the symptom, and lack of adequate meals tends to be the problem.
Right, and we're seeing those those energy shots being used even by basically children, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, and they are quite loaded with caffeine. So it will give you that caffeine boost, but it can actually increase heart rate and cause medical problems if it's abused.
Yeah, they aren't without problems, and unfortunately there are many deaths that have been linked to Red Bull, and it can just cause heart palpitations. I had a high school kid that really loved his Monster drink, and he had a couple of them before his basketball practice and ended up in the emergency room with, heart palpitations. So I would much rather see people energize themselves with real food, quality meals, and also getting adequate sleep, so that this is looking at the whole picture and not just at that little dose of caffeine.
I also noticed Nancy, and we're talking to Nancy. You can find her at nanciclarkrd.com. I do notice that you just threw out 2 food combinations that are interesting, because I believe you mentioned like banana and peanut butter and another combination where you're bringing together something that offers healthy carbs along with protein. Is that something that you often recommend?
Precisely. I look a lot at protein-carb combinations. Since I work with an athletic population, they need carbohydrates to fuel the muscles, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and they need protein to build and repair their muscles. So that's where you get the peanut butter with the banana. You get the cheese with the apple. And just always think about carb-protein combinations, because for active people, they serve 2 different jobs, plus protein satiating. And what's interesting is that when people combine fruit with the protein, like, apple and cheese, they're more likely to eat the apple. If they have just an apple, it's like, it might not get consumed as popularly as if they have it with the cheese. So that's what the research is showing, that you take fruit, you cut it into pieces, you make it, you pair it with something else, and voila, people will eat more of it. And that's what we want, more fruits, vegetables, whole grains, because those are truly the foundation of a healthy diet, whether you're an athlete or not.
And what I do is I take those things with me. I actually do take high-quality peanut butter. When you read the side of the panel, it says organic peanuts. No other words there. No paragraph with palm fillers and emulsifying agents and sugar. None of that. Just says peanuts. And I actually sometimes take that with me in a little container, and we'll just use it on a spoon. I don't have to put it on bread, along with something like a fruit. And that really can get you through when you're traveling, which I am often on a plane traveling to lectures, so that you don't have to stop in and grab that donut, which I don't do because I have those things with me.
Precisely. And one of the best things about peanut butter is that it's portable and it doesn't spoil, doesn't need refrigeration. So like you, I travel with my peanut butter sandwiches on whole grain bread, and I'll pack 3 or 4 of them in my suitcase. So it just makes life very convenient, and a nice alternative to whatever happens to be at the airport.
I actually find pretty much everyone who really maintains a healthy lifestyle for themselves brings food with them. I mean, it also saves a lot of money, but, that's true. But I'm not doing it only for that reason. I just like knowing I have my lettuce with me. It's not even chopped up in a salad. I have a celery with me that I could just munch on. I have organic brown rice cakes with me. And I will also bring pre-frozen pieces of turkey that are frozen when I leave. And during the middle of the day, they're just room temperature. So that really makes healthy eating on the go so much easier.
And that's called being responsible. And being responsible, I mean, that's a word that a lot of millennials haven't even heard. I mean, they're just thinking of grabbing things on the run. So, good nutrition, as you said, it starts in the supermarket. It comes with knowing what to buy. And it's having the right food in the right place at the right time. And when you do that and prevent yourself from getting too hungry because I haven't had anything to eat all day due to lack of planning, you can really invest in a higher energy lifestyle and a healthier diet and feel better.
That's a big part of it. We love to feel better, and I'd like to remind you listeners that you're listening to Herbally Yours, and our guest today is Nancy Clark, RD, fitness, exercise, and competitive athletes. Don't let nutrition be your missing link, as well as people who are not necessarily athletes, and you can find her at nancyclarkrd.com. And Nancy, in your book, Nancy Clark's Sports Nutrition Guidebook, what are some of the things that listeners might find in there that's helpful?
What they'll find helpful is just the handy tips and practical information. I provide information on just how to manage the American food supply. How do you eat? What about breakfast? What about lunch? What about snacks? Snack attacks? How do you lose weight and have energy to exercise? What happens with dieting that's gone awry and just becoming food obsessed and exercise obsessed? What do you eat before you work out? What do you fuel up, fuel during, refuel afterwards? So I provide, real practical information, but also the science that's behind it, so people understand why they should be eating a certain way that they are. And the feedback that I've been gotten is that people just really like the how-to application, because food is so confusing these days. There's so much fear wrapped up in eating, and I try to just dissipate the fear and bring in some balanced perspectives and know that people don't have to have a perfect diet to have an excellent diet. There's not a good food or a bad food, but there's a balanced diet and an unbalanced diet.
Now, what about taking handfuls of vitamin pills that, not only athletes, but so many people, they come to my office with shopping bags full of, thousands of dollars worth of supplements. They can hardly carry them in because they're so tired. And I go, well, is that working for you? And no, obviously. So what do you think of that?
Well, I say, first, let's look at your diet. But I'll have them, my clients do the same thing, and I have them, pull out the bottle, and why do you take this? Oh, my neighbor said I should. Why do you take this? I don't even know. Why do you have this? Oh, my best friend was selling it, and she claims it's really good. So people often take tons of these supplements. They have no idea why they're taking them, if they're effective.
Well, what they do in terms of interacting with each other or pharmaceuticals they may be on.
Yeah, and so no amount of supplements will compensate for a lousy diet. And that's what people fail to understand, that health is based so much more than on just vitamins, but food comes with a whole matrix of synergistic compounds that all work together. So even if you're eating well, you can get the nutrients that you're needing. So there's no need to take a supplement if you're consuming, the fruits, the vegetables, the whole grains, the adequate proteins, and that's where working with a dietitian can help people trust their food. I mean, there's so many people that just don't trust food or what they're doing these days. So there's a lot of educating that needs to be done, but the bottom line is that no amount of supplements will compensate for a lousy diet.
Right. And on the other hand, I think it's a great thing if you're not feeling perfect, or even if you are, to get a nutritional analysis so we actually measure the levels that you do have. And sometimes we can find something that's a little low, which we can compensate through using a food that has that substance in it more consciously, and or taking a supplement to replace that missing element, rather than just a bunch of pills and you don't know why, as Nancy just pointed out.
Precisely, yeah. And it's an individual conversation, as you said. Each person's body is just so different. Just look at how people respond to caffeine. Some people drink coffee before they go to bed and they sleep like a baby, and other people, more than 1 cup in the morning is like, whoa, that's plenty for the day. Look at alcohol. Some people can drink a 6-pack of beer very easily, and others just like, a half a can and they're under the table. So each body is so different. It deserves an individual conversation, and there's so much that we don't know. And as you say, it's important to be curious. And if you aren't feeling great, just sort of be curious. I wonder if I were to change my diet, if that would help me feel better, have more energy, and, have more fun.
Well, that is great information. And Nancy, we are going to go because you've been a wonderful guest. And I want to remind our listeners that you have been listening to the Herbally Yours right here on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, and my guest today has been Nancy Clark. You can find her at Nancy Clark RD. And you're tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, send us an email at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.